Hey everyone, today we're looking at our Doctrinal Mastery 2nd Thessalonians lesson, which means you've already done the contextual lesson before. And so students have some basic understanding of what's taught in these verses, but today we're going to go a little bit deeper, we're going to apply. I've found it's helpful with all the Doctrinal Mastery lessons to make some decisions before class about what you're going to do and how you'll budget your time. For example, you'll notice that there's three things that we're going to do in this lesson. The first thing is we're going to do a little memorizing of the Doctrinal Mastery reference and key scripture phrase. I would say 5 minutes is probably sufficient there. You could spend the whole time memorizing all the verses, but that wouldn't lead you to the second and third thing. The second thing is we want to explain the doctrine of the apostasy. That's a little bit of a review, but it's going to help students solidify through repetition some of the teachings of the day before and of today. I would say about 10 minutes would be plenty for that, which leaves the rest or the bulk of the time for applying the principles of acquiring spiritual knowledge in a real life situation with the teachings of 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 3. And so in advance, decide a little bit of time here, maybe 5, maybe 10 here, but let's focus our attention here because that seems to be the thing of most value for this lesson. I'll give you a couple thoughts and ideas that I hope will stir the pot and help you come up with some inspiration that will be a blessing to your class. So with the memorize, that 5 minutes, I think the simple things that we do a lot just work really well. The app, if you choose to use it, it focuses on memorizing all of the verses. And again, we're not trying to do that today, just this. So one of the easiest things we can do all the time is just write this on the board and then have a student come up and say, let's quote this whole thing together. And then the student's going to erase a word. And let's quote it again out loud, the whole class. We're just going to repeat and repeat and repeat. You can say, okay, erase 2 words, erase 3 words. And then you can call students one by one and say, okay, Sally, you try it. David, how about you? Bill, how about you? And you just try it over and over. It might be fun once everything's erased to have Susan come up and would you write it back on the board? See if you can write it back. Everybody turn around, close your eyes, get them just doing some fun things. But we're just going to repeat and repeat and repeat. 5 minutes and you're done. Remember that the review, maybe tomorrow and the next day, you can review this. The more we repeat, the more likely it is to remember. 5 minutes and then you're done. With the explain portion, I like this. If we're going to have a little review and make sure that students really understand this and go a little bit deeper, I would start with a kind of a 3-pronged approach. First, give them 90 seconds to write in their journal just on their own an explanation of what the great apostasy is and why it happened. And so they're just going to nobody's going to be talking and every student can be involved in this way. And just tell them to do their best. Then I'd do the second step is to out loud explain the apostasy as if you were talking to a child and do this in pairs, in groups of 2, 3 at the most. And so you tell the person, whoever's oldest, you're going to go first, or whoever's tallest, you're going to go first. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Explain the apostasy to your neighbor, and then have the neighbor explain it back. You might want to repeat this a couple times because different neighbors would have different things, and the repetition will help students hopefully explain and understand the apostasy a little bit better. You may want to have 2 students that you feel understand this really well come up and model it to the class. But what this is doing is solidifying an understanding several different times to students. A third thing, you can do the same thing with neighbors and say, okay, could you this time include insights on why a complete restoration of Christ's church was necessary? And so you're just going to add layers to this and repeat and repeat. Again, I think 10 minutes would be plenty. It's a review from yesterday, but also a chance to solidify some principles. Now, the practice application, this is where you're going to spend most of your time. This one is kind of tricky, and that's why I like it. I think students will like the stretch. We have a quick review of the principles of acquiring spiritual knowledge. I'll encourage you throughout the year to don't skip this. have a little fun with it, do a matching. You could do it on the board, but have them review the principles of acquiring spiritual knowledge. All right, now we're getting to the practice scenario. This is a situation with a friend who's faithful, a member of another church, and has a question that is posed in a text form. Today, my pastor taught that members of your church believe that yours is the only true church and every other church is false. Is that true? I feel closer to God because of my church. How could it not be from God? I would set this up in a way that really fuels students' desire to do well with this. So ask them, why is this a tricky scenario? Why is this potentially a dangerous scenario with a friend? And help them see how the implications of this. We don't want to come across as arrogant. We don't want him to come across as thinking that we think that him and all his church, that they're doomed. And so let students talk about why this is kind of a tricky scenario. I think if you set it up well, they'll be more likely to study. We then go and have students really explore as they seek further understanding through divinely appointed sources. And as they think about concepts and questions with an eternal perspective, and they figure out what it means to act in faith in this scenario, both as the friend and the person who is asking this. And so I might invite students to work in groups of 2 or 3 and to take notes. And instead of treating this as we're going to figure out what to say to our friend, we're going to treat this scenario as an opportunity for us to learn more deeply some things that would help us as we interact with all people. And so this isn't about coming up with the right answer to say, but it's really about helping our students really get an eternal perspective that will help them. And so this is kind of a learning. Take notes, have some fun with it. You can check in, take a couple minutes here, share some answers, take a couple minutes here, share some answers. You could culminate this with a role play where they're actually going to, respond as if you were responding to Kishan, or write it down if you think that would work better for your class. But again, the idea is just have a great experience learning and understanding. If we know the doctrine, we'll be better able to explain it and talk in real life ways with our friends. Have a wonderful time with this. I hope it's a great lesson for you.